In the endless dark of space where stars whispered like distant memories, the galaxy had long forgotten the name of Earth. The mighty Solari Council ruled now, proud and arrogant, believing themselves the most advanced race to ever exist. They laughed at the old stories of humans, calling them childish myths told to scare soldiers and entertain children. To them, humanity was nothing more than a legend lost in time. But legends have power, especially the ones built on truth. On a quiet night aboard the Solari outpost Epsilon 9, a lone technician named Ryan sat in front of a humming console. The station was on the far edge of the galaxy, guarding a dead sector that no one cared about anymore. His job was simple, boring, and endless: to watch the deep space scanners for any strange activity. For years there had been nothing but silence. Then a sound broke it, a single pulse, faint but clear, echoed through the deep sensors. It was not random noise, not a cosmic wave, not even a known frequency. It was a pattern. Repeating every 12 seconds, Ryan frowned and increased the signal strength. The pulse grew louder, sharper, almost rhythmic. His hands trembled slightly as he ran the old decoding program. The console flickered, then began translating the pulse into text. At first, it looked like gibberish, strange symbols and half-formed letters, but then, one word appeared in clear ancient Terran script: humanity. Ryan froze. His heart pounded in his chest. He knew what that word meant, though he had never believed it was real. Quickly, he called his superior, Commander Talon. The older Solari arrived with irritation in his tone, but as soon as he saw the screen, the color drained from his face. "This can't be," he muttered, his voice barely a whisper. "That language, it's dead." The transmission kept repeating, but now there were more words, slowly decoding with each cycle. The old AI translator worked harder. Pulling forgotten patterns from deep archives, the message became clearer. "This is the United Nations Dark Fleet Command. We are returning. Prepare yourselves." A heavy silence fell over the room. The sound of the pulse filled the air like a heartbeat. Ryan looked at his commander, eyes wide with fear. "What do we do, sir?" Talon swallowed hard. "We report it," he said, though his voice shook. Immediately. The report reached the Solari Council within hours. The High Chamber gathered in the shining towers of Cerilon Prime. Surrounded by light and arrogance, the councilors laughed when they heard the message. Their leader, High Consul Varric, smirked and said, "Humans returning? Impossible, they were never real." The room filled with laughter. But not everyone was amused. Far below the chamber, in the dusty lower halls of the Solari archives, an old scholar named Karian watched the footage with trembling hands. He had spent his life studying forbidden texts, collecting fragments of a history no one wanted to remember. In secret, he had read the tales of the Deathworlders, of Terrans, of humans, beings who were said to have fought the stars themselves. Karin replayed the signal again and again. The tone, the structure, the code, it all matched ancient human communication methods. This was no random anomaly, it was deliberate. He whispered to himself, "They are real, and they are coming back." That night, the galaxy's outer sensors began detecting more anomalies. Dead satellites from the forgotten Rim system suddenly powered on. Their old beacons blinked with life for the first time in a million years. The same words appeared across dozens of channels. Ancient Terran letters burning into every network, Dark Fleet reinitializing. The Solari military tried to block the signals, but it was too late. Civilizations across the galaxy had already seen them. Panic spread like wildfire. Rumors filled every planet. Some said the humans were gods returning for judgment. Others believed they were demons of the void. Karen was summoned to speak before the council. He stood in the grand hall, surrounded by leaders who looked down on him with contempt. "You waste our time with fairy tales," Varric sneered. "There are no humans, scholar." Karen lifted his trembling hands, showing the data on his device. The patterns match ancient Earth transmissions. The coordinates point to the outer rift, the same region where the Dark Fleet vanished a million years ago. The chamber grew uneasy. One of the younger counselors whispered, "What if it's true?" Varric slammed his hand on the table. "Then we'll destroy them again," he said coldly. But deep inside, even he felt the tremor of fear. That night, Karen returned to his quarters and gazed at the stars through his crystal window. The void shimmered with strange lights, new stars forming in unnatural patterns. He knew this was only the beginning. The signal was not a call for help, it was a warning. Far beyond the edge of known space, in the silent gulf of the dark void, something stirred, Massive shapes began to move in the blackness, darker than shadow, older than time. Their hulls gleamed faintly as energy rippled across them. Thousands of ships, sleeping giants, slowly waking from an age-long slumber, and at the center of that ancient fleet, buried beneath a dying star, a single voice whispered through the void. "We are home." The stars trembled, the galaxy held its breath. Humanity had awakened. Across the galaxy, the message from the void spread like a living storm. Systems that had been silent for ages flickered to life. Relays that no one remembered suddenly hummed, carrying the same words through the void again and again. "We are returning." Entire civilizations went silent. Scientists called it a malfunction. Soldiers called it a trap. But deep inside, everyone felt the same cold truth. Something ancient was waking. In the lonely lower levels of the Solari archives, Karen worked day and night. His fingers were covered in dust from ancient tablets and fractured data chips. He had found fragments of old war records encrypted in human language. Each line spoke of impossible things: weapons that bent gravity, ships that fought black holes, soldiers who never surrendered. Karen whispered as he read, "Dark Fleet, lost beyond the stars, awaiting the signal to return." His mind raced. The pieces were forming a picture no one wanted to see. Meanwhile, the council met again. This time the chamber was filled with fear behind pride. High Consul Varric stood tall, trying to look calm as he spoke. "These are old human ruins reactivating. There is no fleet, no return. We are the rulers of this galaxy, and we will remain so." But not all were convinced. General Arvos, commander of the Solari Defense Fleet, frowned as he looked at the transmission logs. "Sir, our long-range scanners have detected movement near the outer rift. Massive energy readings older than any of our designs." Varric turned away. "Myth and noise, General," he said coldly. "Do not let superstition rule your mind." Still, in the dark corners of the galaxy, whispers began to grow louder. Old smugglers spoke of dead worlds glowing again. Miners reported strange shadows crossing the stars. Pilots vanished near the edges of uncharted space, leaving behind only static and the faint hum of that same pulse. Karen decided he could not wait for permission. With help from a few curious researchers, he prepared an unauthorized expedition. They would travel beyond the Solari border to trace the origin of the signal. On the eve of his journey, he stood by the viewing deck. Looking at the distant stars, he remembered the stories his mentor once told him. Stories of humanity's fall. The humans had not been defeated by another race. The old legend said they had vanished willingly, leaving behind their empire to explore the darkness beyond creation. He wondered, why did they leave and what did they find there? As his ship, the Auralis, departed from the Solari capital, Karen recorded a final message to the council. "If we are to face what is coming, we must understand it first, not mock it, not ignore it." Days turned into weeks as the Auralis flew through forgotten space, past broken moons and burnt worlds. The crew grew nervous. Every sensor reading was strange. Gravitational waves twisting unnaturally, light bending where it should not. Then one night, the ship's AI spoke. Unknown transmission detected. The voice was calm but cold. The signal was strong, repeating from the void ahead. Karen's heart beat faster. He activated the translator. The screen flickered, and for the first time, a clear image appeared. A symbol. A black eagle clutching stars. An ancient Terran insignia under it. The words appeared slowly, burned into the console. Dark Fleet Command. Authorization level prime, awakening sequence complete. Karen stared. Unable to breathe, the crew looked to him for answers. But he had none. At that same moment, across the galaxy, other signs appeared. Entire derelict battle stations began powering up, their cores glowing blue on forgotten planets. Human-built machines buried under 1,000,000 years of dust began to stir. Old war drones rose from the sand like ghosts, their red optics igniting one by one. The galaxy's balance shifted quietly, unnoticed by most but felt by all. Back on Cerilon Prime, the Council could no longer laugh. Thousands of sensors now confirmed the impossible. The Dark Fleet's coordinates were real, and from that point in the void, an energy field began expanding, swallowing stars in its path. Panic spread, worlds evacuated, fleets mobilized. Armies gathered near the borders, preparing for a threat they did not understand. Karen's ship drifted closer to the source. The deeper they went, the darker the space became. It was as if light itself refused to exist there. Time felt slower, reality unstable. Then the ship's lights dimmed. Every system began to fail one by one. A heavy vibration ran through the hull, and outside the window a shadow appeared. It was massive, silent, and endless. A ship larger than any planet. Its surface black like the void itself. The Oralis floated near it like a grain of dust beside a mountain. The crew watched in stunned silence as the giant structure began to move. Lights flickered across its hull like waking eyes. Ancient symbols glowed faintly. UNS Eternity, Karen whispered. It's real. Humanity's fleet. It never died. As he said those words, a voice echoed through the comms. Deep and human. Unidentified vessel detected. Identify yourself, Karen froze. The voice was not a recording. It was alive, calm, and commanding. He swallowed and replied, This is Karin of the Solari. We come in peace. There was a pause, then the voice spoke again. Solari, we remember that name. You once served in the old wars. This is Admiral Hayes. United Nations Dark Fleet, we have returned. The transmission cut off, leaving only the soft hum of power rising through space. Karin fell back in his chair, shaking. He realized what no one in the galaxy was ready to accept. Humanity had never died, they had been waiting. The Oralis drifted silently near the enormous shadow of the UNS Eternity. Every member of Karin's crew sat frozen. Their eyes wide with disbelief, the ship was beyond comprehension. Its black hull stretched across the void like a continent of metal. The stars behind it disappeared completely, swallowed by its mass. It was not just a ship. It was a moving world. Karin's voice trembled as he whispered, They built this 1,000,000 years ago. The thought was impossible, yet the proof floated before them, whole and alive. The comms crackled again. The same deep voice echoed through the speakers. Solari vessel, stand by. Docking procedures initiated. Before anyone could react, invisible beams of light wrapped around the Oralis, pulling it gently toward one of the vast docking bays. The crew shouted in panic, but Karin raised a hand, his eyes fixed on the growing structure before them. Do not resist, he said. They could destroy us with a thought if they wished. The small Solari ship was swallowed by the hangar. Lights flickered to life around them. White, sharp, human as the engines powered down. The airlock doors opened with a hiss. A bridge of light extended toward them. Karin felt a strange warmth radiating through the air. It wasn't hostile, but powerful, ancient. Stay close, he told his team, stepping forward with slow, cautious steps. They walked into the massive corridor of the human ship. The walls were black metal lined with silver veins of energy that pulsed like living arteries. Strange blue lights shimmered overhead. It was clean, untouched by time, as if the ship had only slept. Waiting for its moment to wake again, then came the sound. Footsteps. Human footsteps echoing through the corridor. From the shadows, figures appeared, tall and armored, their faces hidden behind dark helmets. Their movements were precise, disciplined. One of them removed his helmet, revealing a human face, pale from stasis yet unmistakably alive. His eyes were steel gray, and his voice carried the calm of command. Welcome aboard the Eternity, he said. I am Admiral Hayes. Karin's heart pounded. He bowed slightly, unsure how to greet a being from myth. Admiral, he said softly, we thought your kind were gone. Hayes studied him with quiet curiosity. So the galaxy forgot us, he murmured. Perhaps that is for the best. He gestured for them to follow. The Solari scientists exchanged nervous glances but obeyed as they walked deeper into the ship. Karin noticed thousands of sealed chambers along the walls. Each chamber held a human in suspended animation. Sleeping peacefully, the sight made him stop. Are they all in alive? He asked. Hayes nodded slowly. They sleep until the call is complete, until our worlds are ready to rise again. Karin felt both awe and fear. You waited for 1,000,000 years, he said. Why now? Why return? Hayes stopped walking. His expression hardened. Because something has changed, he said quietly. The darkness we entered beyond the edge of creation has begun to move. We came back to prepare, Karin frowned. The darkness? You mean a place, or something alive? The Admiral didn't answer at first. His gaze turned toward a massive viewing panel that revealed the void outside. Through it, Karin could see distant stars, and behind them, something vast, something shifting in the dark, almost invisible but not, like a shadow against the stars. It is not a place, Hayes said finally. It is what remains when light itself dies. Before Karin could respond, Alarms began to echo through the ship. Red lights flashed across the corridor, and a robotic voice spoke through the intercom. Perimeter breach detected. Solari defense fleet approaching. Hayes turned sharply toward Karin. Did you bring them here? Karin shook his head desperately. No. They must have followed us. Hayes pressed his wrist console. Deploy sentinel drones. Through the viewing panel, Karin saw movement, black shapes spreading from the eternity like a cloud of wings. Thousands of autonomous drones launched silently into space, forming a protective web around the ship. The Solari fleet opened fire, energy blasts streaking across the darkness, but none of the shots hit. The space around the eternity shimmered like liquid glass. Bending the beams away, Karin whispered, "They can warp space itself." Admiral Hayes stood calm, watching the battle unfold. "They should not have come," he said quietly. "We are not their enemies, not yet." He raised his hand, and the drones stopped firing. Instead, they projected a signal, a message in universal frequency. "Stand down, you face the United Nations Dark Fleet. There will be no second warning." The Solari ships hesitated, confused and terrified before they could respond. One of the smaller human ships appeared beside them, a Titan-class destroyer, sleek and silent. It didn't fire, but its presence alone made their sensors overload. Within seconds, the Solari fleet retreated, leaving only empty space. Karin exhaled slowly, still shaking. "You could have destroyed them," he said. Hayes nodded. "Yes," he said simply. "But destruction is not why we returned." He turned toward the sleeping soldiers sealed in crystal pods. "We came back because the galaxy is not ready for what's coming." Karin looked at him, eyes wide. "What is coming?" Hayes looked out at the distant void again, his voice heavy with memory. "Something older than us, something that followed humanity beyond the stars." The lights dimmed as the giant ship began to move, its engines humming with power not seen in a million years. Karin realized he was standing inside a myth made real, and that the story of humanity was far from over. As the eternity turned toward the galaxy's heart, Hayes spoke softly, almost to himself. "The first fleet has awakened, and somewhere in the endless dark, another signal began to echo in reply. Fleet 2 reinitializing." The galaxy's countdown had begun. The darkness beyond the stars pulsed with new life. The UNS Eternity moved through the void like a silent god, its engines glowing with soft blue light that cut through the eternal night. All around it, shapes began to emerge from the black. One by one, other ships appeared, rising like ghosts from the deep abyss, their hulls scarred, ancient, yet still shining with human craftsmanship. Karin stood on the viewing deck beside Admiral Hayes, staring at the impossible sight. Hundreds, then thousands of vessels filled the darkness, each the size of a city. Some carried planetary cores for engines. Some bore marks of long-lost battles. All of them hummed with a single rhythm, the heartbeat of humanity. "This is the Dark Fleet," Hayes said quietly. "Our brothers and sisters asleep for 1,000,000 years." Answering the call, Karin could not speak. His mind could not hold the scale of what he saw. "You were never destroyed," he whispered. "You chose to disappear." Hayes nodded slowly. "We had to. The galaxy was dying then. Wars, corruption, hunger. We needed to go beyond creation, to find a cure for extinction itself." He paused, his gray eyes narrowing. "But what we found was worse than death." Karin turned toward him. "The darkness you spoke of," he said softly. "It followed you back." Hayes didn't answer, but the silence between them told Karin everything. Moments later, the command deck lit up as the communication channels burst with new activity. Dozens of human voices filled the air. "Fleet Command to Admiral Hayes. Reinitialization complete. All Titan-class dreadnoughts online. Human presence confirmed across all vectors." Hayes took a deep breath. "Begin synchronization. Prepare the fleet for full awakening." Outside, the ships began to align in perfect formation. Beams of light stretched between them like silver threads, forming a massive network that spanned across sectors. Karin watched in awe as dormant systems across the galaxy responded. Human stations, colonies and satellites long buried under alien soil began to glow. The galaxy had forgotten them, but humanity had never truly left. Across the Solari capital, chaos erupted. The council chambers shook with panic. The image of the Dark Fleet covered every holoscreen. Millions watched in silence as the sky above Cerilon Prime turned dark. The Solari fleet scrambled to prepare for defense. High Consul Varric shouted over the noise. "They dare invade our galaxy. Deploy every fleet we have. General Arvos looked at the readings and shook his head. "Sir, this is not an invasion," he said, his voice trembling. "It's something else. The power readings are beyond measure. Their ships could erase us before we fire a single shot." But pride is louder than fear. Varric's voice thundered. "Then we fight, even if it's our end." The Solari Armada moved out, thousands of warships forming a blazing wall of energy near the outer systems. They positioned themselves to block the human fleet's path. Hayes stood before the holo display, watching their formation. "They're preparing for war," he said softly. "They still don't understand." Karen looked at him. "Then tell them, Admiral. Tell them what you came for." Hayes nodded. He stepped to the console and transmitted a signal across every galactic frequency. The message echoed through every planet. Every ship, every mind tuned to the stars. "To all who can hear this message, this is Admiral Hayes of the United Nations Dark Fleet. Humanity has returned. We do not seek conquest, we do not seek revenge, we seek balance. We seek peace. But know this, we will not bow. Not again, not ever." His words echoed across the void, and for a long moment there was only silence. Then, the Solari fleets opened fire. Thousands of energy blasts shot toward the human formation, lighting up the stars like a storm of suns. Karen flinched, expecting destruction. But before the beams could touch the fleet, the space around the human ships rippled. The light bent, twisted, and vanished. Not a single human ship was hit. Admiral Hayes didn't move, his voice was calm. "Activate defense grids." The Dark Fleet responded instantly. Entire dreadnoughts turned their cannons, not outward but toward empty space from their cores. Waves of pure gravitational energy rippled across the battlefield. Bending time and light, the Solari ships froze in place. Their weapons refused to fire, their engines died one by one. They drifted helplessly, surrounded by quiet light. Karen stared speechless. You could destroy them all." Hayes's expression was unreadable. "Destruction is easy," he said, "but mercy is harder." He sent one final message. "We remember every war, every betrayal, every fallen world. But we have learned that true power is not in fear. It is in restraint." The Solari ships retreated, humiliated, shaken, and silent. For the first time in recorded history, the rulers of the galaxy bowed their heads. As the human fleet advanced toward the galactic center, the stars themselves seemed to tremble. Karin felt a strange warmth in his chest, fear, awe, and hope all at once. He looked at the Admiral. "What happens now?" Hayes turned toward him, his eyes reflecting the endless dark. "Now, we remind the galaxy what it means to be human." The fleet's engines roared, thunder that carried across light years. Entire constellations flickered as the Dark Fleet passed through, leaving trails of silver fire, and somewhere beyond the last frontier, another voice responded to the human signal. "Acknowledged Fleet 2 operational. Fleet 3 awakening." The void answered with whispers of movement. Millions of ancient ships turning slowly toward the living galaxy. Karen realized then that history was not repeating. It was restarting. Humanity's silence had ended, and their dawn had begun. The galaxy held its breath as the Dark Fleet entered the heart of known space. The light of 1,000 human warships painted the void with silver fire. From the smallest colony world to the grand capitals of empires, every being looked to the stars in silent awe. For 1,000,000 years, the galaxy had ruled itself, free of the humans they once feared. But now, that forgotten name echoed through every system again: humanity. On the command deck of the UNS Eternity, Admiral Hayes stood before the viewing window, his eyes reflecting the swirl of starlight and shadow. Karen stood beside him, still struggling to understand everything he had seen. The fleet stretched beyond sight, a living storm of light and power. "You could conquer the galaxy in a day," Karen said softly. "Why not end it now?" Hayes didn't look away from the stars. "Because that's not who we are," he said. "We left this galaxy to escape its hatred, not to feed it again." His voice was calm but heavy. "When we crossed beyond the edge of creation, we found the truth, that power without purpose only breeds monsters." Karen turned toward him. "Then why return?" The Admiral finally looked at him, his gray eyes ancient and tired. "Because the darkness followed us back." Before Karen could speak, the alarms echoed once more. A communication feed appeared on the central screen. The Solari Council had sent a transmission. The face of High Consul Varric filled the air, proud, cold but trembling underneath. "Admiral Hayes," Varric said, his voice sharp. "You claim peace, yet your fleet blocks half our systems. Withdraw or face annihilation." Hayes watched him quietly, then replied, "Annihilation," he said softly. "You still don't understand what that word means." He turned to his officers. "Open visual to all systems." Every civilization in the galaxy saw it. The Dark Fleet moved in perfect silence. Hundreds of Titan-class ships aligned, forming a massive ring around the galactic core. Energy pulsed between them like a heartbeat. A wave of light rippled across the void. And for a brief moment, every sun in the galaxy dimmed. Hayes's voice filled the transmission. "We came not to rule, but to remind. The stars you think are yours were once ours too. We gave you this peace and you forgot who we were. We are humanity, and we do not destroy what we build." The energy field faded. The lights of the stars returned brighter than before. The show of power was not an attack, it was a warning. In the Silari capital, silence filled the chamber. No one spoke. No one laughed. Even Varric, who once mocked the myth of humans, felt the weight of their presence pressing against his pride. He whispered, "They are gods," but Karen, standing on the human flagship, shook his head. "No," he said. "There's something far greater. They're human." The days that followed reshaped the galaxy. The human fleet sent envoys to the other races, not soldiers but engineers. Healers, teachers, they repaired broken worlds, reignited fading suns, restored long-dead systems. Wherever they went, life bloomed again. Yet in the quiet corners of the void, something stirred, a whisper that chilled even the bravest hearts. Hayes knew it well. He had heard it beyond the edge of existence. It was not a sound but a presence, an ancient hunger that consumed stars and memories alike. One evening, Karen found Hayes alone in the observation hall, staring into the blackness between galaxies. "It's coming, isn't it?" Karen asked. Hayes nodded slowly. "It always was. The darkness is not a place. It is what remains when life gives up hope." He turned toward the alien scholar. "That is why we returned, not to rule this galaxy, but to prepare it." Karen's voice trembled. "And if it cannot be stopped?" Hayes smiled faintly, the ghost of pride touching his lips. "Then we'll remind the darkness what it means to face humanity." The Admiral's voice carried through the fleet as he gave the final command. "Activate all systems, begin full reawakening of the human colonies. The galaxy must stand together or it will fall alone." Massive doors opened across the human vessels, releasing swarms of drones and transports carrying human envoys to every major world. Beacons ignited in deep space, spreading messages of unity, hope, and warning. Karen watched in awe as the message spread. "We are humanity. We remember every world, every name, every promise. We were gone, but we never forgot." On worlds across the stars, children looked up and saw new constellations form in the night sky. Shapes of human ships moving among the stars like guardian angels. The myths of monsters were replaced by the memory of protectors. And as the galaxy slowly began to change, the human fleet gathered once more near the rim of the void. Their ships aligned around a single glowing tier in space. The gate they once passed through 1,000,000 years ago. Hayes stood in silence as the energy shimmered. "It's opening again," he said. "The darkness remembers us." Karen stepped forward, his voice barely a whisper. "What will you do now?" Hayes smiled faintly, the light of the stars reflecting in his eyes. "What we've always done," he said. "We'll face it. Together." The fleet engines roared as the Dark Fleet turned once more toward the black horizon. Humanity's banners lit the stars, bright and fearless. "For every life that still remembers light," Hayes said softly. "We are humanity, and we are not done yet." As the ships vanished into the glowing rift, the galaxy stood in silence. 1,000,000 civilizations watched the dawn rise on the human name once more. And in the quiet that followed, the stars themselves seemed to whisper, "They're back."